Yes, indeed. Top of the hour and breaking news as we come on the air with a jury saying Rudy Giuliani has to pay big time for defaming election workers after the 2020 presidential race. The startling sum just awarded to two women who say their lives will never be the same after his false claims, after his lies. Then Israel says late today that its own soldiers accidentally killed 3 Israeli hostages. Hallie will have the latest from Tel Aviv on why the soldiers apparently mistook their own people for the enemy. Plus, a potentially dangerous storm forecast to slam the East Coast all weekend long. Heavy rain, strong winds. We're live with where things are just starting, and we'll tell you when it's expected to end. And women and men are now looking to sterilization and other forms of permanent birth control as states enact abortion bans. We'll take you on one woman's journey to a life-altering decision. And then Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, ready to drop a new album. Fans excited for his music, but for others, it's a really sour note. The culture clash over cancel culture is in tonight's original. Good evening, I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie, who is, as we said, on assignment in Israel. Tonight, a jury has just decided Rudy Giuliani will have to pay an astonishing amount of money, $148 million in damages, for defamatory statements he made about those 2 Georgia poll workers after the 2020 election. Giuliani spoke to the press as he left court this evening, maintaining that his defamatory statements were true, that, in fact, they were not. And that his comments, he said, did not cause the threats that Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman received. Take a listen, but be skeptical.
I have no doubt that my comments were made and they were supportable and are supportable today. The comments they received I had nothing to do with. My comments had no connection at all to those. There were thousands of things in the press about this, of which mine were a small amount. There's no way to say that my comments connected to that.
Well, this was Shay Moss testifying before the January 6th committee about how Giuliani's lies about her and her mother after the 2020 election changed their lives.
I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all.
All right, we've got this story covered from all angles tonight. We have NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos and NBC News justice correspondent Ken Delaney and our own Ryan Riley, who is outside of district court in Washington. Ryan, let's start with you. This financial penalty is way above what lawyers for Moss and Freeman were asking for. And then, again, Giuliani seemed to double down outside of court. So what happened in the trial that you think led to this very big penalty?
I think it was the testimony. It was just really powerful testimony, and Giuliani just really couldn't take the L here, right? He still believes these election lies, as we just heard from him. He will not admit the truth to this. He's on sort of a different planet and still believes these conspiracy theories and is supporting them today. Almost he's like trying to add to the tab here that he's already racked up of $140 million. But it's not as though it's going to be difficult, I think, for the plaintiffs to actually collect, of course, that much money from Rudy Giuliani, given his current financial situation. But when they were invited to send a message, as the plaintiff's lawyers laid out, I think that's just what the jury did. Said that this is unacceptable and you cannot continue to spread these lies when there is absolutely no basis on them for them, and then just double down on this altogether. And really, I think sending that really strong message by inflicting a penalty that Rudy Giuliani's lawyers would describe as the civil equivalent of the death penalty here.
That's an interesting analogy. Danny Savalos, Giuliani was in hot water with the judge earlier this week after he basically reiterated his defamatory remarks to the press. Here's the thing. He's already admitted that what he said wasn't true. Then he comes back and doubles down on it again earlier this week. Then he comes out of court today and seems to double down on it again.
Yes, and his theory that he wasn't allowed to present a defense makes no sense for 2 reasons. Number one, he chose not to take the stand. And you saw him try to explain that away at his impromptu press conference. He said essentially that if I had, I might have been found in contempt. That's really unlikely. I mean, people take the stand and say things all the time that judges disagree with. They don't hold them in contempt. The other part to that is the reason that Giuliani wasn't allowed to contest liabilities because he and his defense team chose not to participate in discovery. And by the way, discovery violations happen all the time. For it to get to the point where a judge enters default or decides an issue against a defendant, I can tell you from personal experience, trying to litigate this issue against recalcitrant defendants, that it takes a lot to get to that stage. You get plenty of warnings. So to get to this point, Rudy Giuliani had every opportunity to participate in discovery and testify. He chose not to do so.
He chose not to do so, and again, he submitted paperwork to the court admitting that, in fact, he had defamed them. Ken, what does this ruling say about the accountability that really, and the value, rather, that the jury has for these women's lives and reputations? And then I got to ask somebody here, does Giuliani have the money to pay this? Because he's desperately trying to, find some way to offload his apartment, and he's not paying his legal bills.
Yeah, Tom, the answer to that appears to be no. In terms of the message, it's worth noting that this is really the first time that a court has imposed a punishment for all of these election lies that Donald Trump and the people around him were telling. And it's a whopping punishment. And to build on what Ryan and Danny were saying, what was so remarkable about this whole trial was that Rudy Giuliani was not on the same page as his lawyer. His lawyer said in opening statements he acknowledged that Rudy Giuliani had harmed these women. And that the statements that he made were false. Rudy clearly was not prepared to go along with that. And that ultimately may be the reason his lawyers could not put him on the stand, because he was forbidden by the judge from saying that what he said was true, because she'd already ruled that it wasn't true. And he didn't appear to be able to sustain that. So, and that goes to the fact that this is all part of a personal, financial, and legal decline for Mr. Giuliani. His law licenses have been suspended. He's being sued by one of his lawyers for back legal fees. And of course, he's under indictment in Georgia. This isn't even his biggest legal problem. So the real decline for the person we used to call America's mayor, Tom.
Yeah, he was Times Man of the Year, I think it was, back in, was it 2001? Listen, the fact that he continues to double down on this lie, and it is a lie, when his own lawyer has submitted the paperwork saying, in fact, it's true, you got to wonder if he's not trying to set himself up for an insanity plea or incompetence defense. Danny, what is your read on that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. This is a case, I think probably the biggest challenge for the plaintiffs is, strangely, ironically enough, the fact that this was such a high verdict. Huge verdicts actually can be bad for plaintiffs because they're not always upheld on appeal. And generally a multiple of 1 digit rather than 2 digits, 20 times the compensatory, 1 digit multiplier will usually be upheld. But I think that's probably the biggest challenge for the plaintiffs in this case.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Danny, Ken, and Ryan, good analysis. We appreciate it. We have another major story. The Israeli military says late today one of its units mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza, where troops are engaged in fierce combat. That as protests break out in Israel tonight, and you can see them right there. And now the world's attention turns to the question of whether Israel might listen to the mounting calls for a new, more targeted chapter of this war against Hamas, with a top White House official in the West Bank today for a very big meeting with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, 24 hours after meeting with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That U.S. official basically says this war is about to change. Take a listen.
There will be a transition to another phase of this war, one that is focused in more precise ways on targeting the leadership and on intelligence-driven operations that continues to deal with the ongoing threat that Hamas poses.
Driving this new diplomatic effort, rising tensions between the U.S. and Israel over the cost that the war is having on the innocent civilians caught in the middle of it all. Take a look at this scene. Gazans searching through the rubble after an Israeli strike in Rafah. And then there's this Hamas is saying that it has now launched a new missile barrage targeting Jerusalem. Late tonight, for the first time in weeks, we've got team coverage. NBC's Aaron Gilchrist covering the White House. And we begin, though, with NBC's Hallie Jackson, who is on the move in Tel Aviv. Hallie?
Hey, Tom. So hear me because it's pretty loud here, with a group of supporters, people who have been coming out to Hostage Square, as they call it in central Tel Aviv, to advocate for more negotiations to bring these hostages, Israeli hostages held in Gaza, home. What you are seeing tonight is a direct reaction, I'm told, to what we saw earlier, the announcement by the IDF, the Israeli military, of the mistaken deaths of 3 Israelis who'd been held in captivity. That's what prompted all this. I'm going to step out of the way so our cameraman Pete can see it. And let me tell you, we see a lot of people in Hostage Square and on the streets on Saturday nights, or at least in Hostage Square, less so on the street. We are walking down kind of the main drag in central Tel Aviv here because these people want to make a show of force. They want to have their voices heard. They want to let Benjamin Netanyahu know that they are here and that they want to put pressure on the government to get negotiations going. I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Mai. Mai, tell us why you're here tonight. Why did you come out tonight?
I'm here today because we're calling out to the government to make a deal to release all the hostages, including my 79-year-old grandfather. Today we've learned that the hostages are the enemy of the government. They don't care for them. They don't care if they come back alive or dead. 3 innocent hostages were killed today, not by a terrorist organization, but by IDF soldiers. And I have to say, I do not blame the soldiers. They have been put, the soldiers have been put in an impossible situation. They are in a hostile territory. Anyone could kill them there. And they see someone, they shoot him. So we know they should not have been there in the first place.
Mai, thank you for talking to us tonight. I appreciate it. We should note here that there are so many questions about what exactly happened to those Israelis who were mistakenly killed. Questions about, did they try to speak Hebrew before? Did they try to identify themselves as Israelis? I'm going to move out of the way in this direction. There is likely to be an investigation moving forward about what went wrong, how this possibly could have happened, and then, of course, the reason why all these people are here. Will this put more pressure on the Prime Minister and on the Netanyahu administration to try to restart talks, to try to unlock some kind of a diplomatic solution to get the more than 130 people believed to be held in Gaza home? You can see the backside now of the protest, and this is what it's been like for maybe about the last 90 minutes or so, kind of a rotation through the streets, a rotation around Hostage Square. We'll see how long this thing goes, Tom. Back to you.
Well, it's after midnight there, and it's the Sabbath, of course, there in Israel. So, Hallie, great reporting, and we heard you just fine. Thank you very much. Hallie Jackson in Tel Aviv tonight. We want to bring in NBC's Aaron Gilchrist, who is posted up near the White House right now. Aaron, let's talk diplomacy here, and how big of a deal is this new message from the United States on where it says this war is going?
Yeah, Tom, this was a key part of the reason that the president sent his top national security advisor back to the region, back to Israel and to the West Bank to start talking about what the next phases of the military activity in Gaza would look like. We know that the national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, spent a significant portion of time with the Israeli prime minister as well as other Israeli leaders. And you see here, he also met today with the Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, to talk about what's happening on the ground in Gaza, what comes after the war in terms of the Palestinian Authority's involvement in governing after Israel finishes its operations to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. That is something that was talked about with the National Security Advisor, this idea of transitioning from this, what they've called a high-intensity operation on the ground in Gaza, to something that is more precise, more targeted, more specifically aimed at the Hamas leaders, something that would have less impact on the civilian population after we know that thousands upon thousands of civilians have been killed in Gaza. We also heard the National Security Advisor as well as spokespeople here in the U.S. say that they understand that this is an operation that the Israelis are going to be undertaking for some time to come. I want you to hear what the National Security Advisor had to say in that regard.
There's no contradiction between saying the fight is going to take months and also saying that different phases will take place at different times over those months, including the transition from the high-intensity operations to more targeted operations.
Now, what Sullivan would not say is whether the U.S. has given the Israelis a timeline, a point at which they have to start this more precise operation on the ground there in Gaza. But it is something that a lot of eyes are watching. And the president himself, Tom, has indicated that the Israelis are losing support as this operation continues to go in a manner that seems to be, as they've said, a high-intensity, wide-ranging operation, Tom.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much. Aaron Gilchrist over at the White House for us tonight. If you are on the East Coast, brace yourself. A mega storm is ramping up to become quite the rain and wind maker, targeting the entire eastern seaboard this weekend, with its eyes set first on Florida, where Governor DeSantis just activated the state guard to help out. Nearly the entire state will be getting soaked with torrential rain tomorrow, which creates concern about potential flooding, of course. Already 5 million people there are under flood alerts. And then here comes the East Coast. We're talking up to 3 inches of rain up the entire coast, and maybe even 7 inches in some areas. On top of that, it's really going to bring a lot of wind here, up to 50 miles per hour. So when should you plan to stay inside and turn on the holiday movies? Here's the rough timing of when the storm might hit. Miami, Tampa, and Charleston, South Carolina. That's tonight or tomorrow through Sunday. Here in Washington, D.C., plus New York and Boston, you're looking at Sunday through Monday. We have meteorologist Bill Karen standing by with the forecast. First, though, we want to go to NBC's Guad Venegas, who's in Hollywood, Florida right now. Guad, Florida's first to be hit. What's the plan right now?
Tom, authorities here are preparing for that possible flooding. Of course, today we've had these gusty winds. It has been a hassle all day. We're getting a little bit of rain. There's been alerts also with the ocean, rip currents everywhere up and down the coast here. So for tourists that are visiting, we saw some people actually trying to get in the water. It's very dangerous. The red flags are out. You can see the water here. This isn't normal for South Florida. These types of waves and these types of currents, as you can see. Most of the people that we've seen out today, again, are tourists. This is a part of the country where people come to get away from those winter conditions in other areas. And, of course, they've gotten stuck with this storm. You can see one of the barriers that has been set up. This is a tiger dam that is filled with water, and it'll protect these communities from the tide that could possibly rise. But the flooding, again, is really what has authorities paying close attention. They've activated emergency pumps in different communities here in South Florida to help with that flooding. If we get a lot of rain in a very short amount of time, it's quite difficult for these cities to pump that water out of the way, because this is a flat landscape, flat geography. We saw what happened in Fort Lauderdale, which is just north of us, earlier this year when they got a ton of rain one day. The airport was underwater at some point, and it took days for some of that flooding to get cleared out of the way. So authorities here have done what they can to prepare. We have a system of canals in South Florida. They've done what they can to have those emptied out and be ready to use the pumps to push that water, if we get all the rain that's forecasted, to push that water into the ocean. Now, Tom, one of the challenges will be the fact that the wind is coming east to west. So as you can see, it's getting pushed in this direction. And the canal system that we have in South Florida pushes all of that water from the sewage system into the ocean using gravity. So it could be a challenge if we keep getting these winds and the water gets pushed inland, as we've seen today, Tom.
Yeah, the palm trees behind you tell the whole story there, Guad. Thank you very much. Get the waiters ready. We want to bring in now meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, when is this? I mean, this is going to be a big storm. When could it become a nor'easter, or is that really off the plate right now, off the table?
Well, most people, Tom, actually think nor'easter as something that would bring, like, a mixture of snow and rain. It actually doesn't have to. This is going to act similar to a nor'easter. If anything, it's actually going to act more like a subtropical storm that we'd get in October. With the gusty winds, coastal flooding, and all the heavy rain, there's very little winter in this storm at all. I mean, which is really unusual for this time of year. So it doesn't look like much, but there's just a ton of clouds. Now a little bit more rain starting to build around the Keys. So that's where the worst weather is going to be for the rest of tonight and early tomorrow morning. I froze this at 6 p.m. Saturday. Just torrential rain over central Florida, hit and miss thunderstorms over South Florida, and that easterly wind fetch still continuing here. We will get isolated severe thunderstorms in Florida. We do not think we're going to have the tornadoes of last weekend. We had like 32 tornadoes, 6 fatalities. But again, it only takes 1 or 2, and they are possible about Tampa to Orlando, really I-4 down to a Space Coast southwards all the way to South Florida. So this would be overnight, these nocturnal storms. So make sure you're paying attention. If you get a tornado warning in the middle of the night, make sure you have your phone on and your alerts on. down so you get that notice and you can get to a safe room in your home. Then I froze this at 2 p.m. Sunday. Coastal flooding is possible from Wilmington all the way up Myrtle Beach down to Charleston. The typical spots here in the Carolinas during high tide is going to be problematic. It's going to feel like a tropical storm. Winds will gust up to 60 miles per hour. And then Sunday night is the worst around the Delmarva region. That's when we could have some coastal flooding, heavy rain around D.C. That Baltimore Ravens football game Sunday night at 8:30 should be interesting with 30-mile-per-hour winds and heavy rain. And then we're also going to watch, this is Monday morning, Tom, New York City, torrential rain, maybe even like thunderstorms all the way through Boston, too. So, you know, this is going to be a huge inconvenience. We're hoping that it's not going to be too destructive, but we'll see how it plays out over the weekend.
All right, Bill, thanks. I think I know what I'm going to be doing Saturday night into Sunday. It's going to be the Hallmark Channel and lots of Christmas music and all that kind of stuff. I know. Thanks, Bill. Lots of folks across the country are right now looking to get a head start on holiday travel a full 10 days before Christmas, trying to avoid that last-minute frenzy and maybe the weather. Some 115 million people are expected to fly or drive over the holidays, 2.5 million more than last year. Many, and this is important, many are working remotely on the front end of vacation and the backside, and that means a longer stretch for holiday travel. Now, remember last year's Southwest Airlines meltdown? Southwest promises it won't happen again, and other airlines are also preparing just in case. NBC's Adrienne Broaddus is at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Okay, Adrienne, first of all, welcome to the team. Second of all, what are you seeing there at the country's third busiest airport, and what are they forecasting for the getaway?
Tom, take a look for yourself. This is the longest line we've seen all day here at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. It's actually the busiest we've seen it here all day, perhaps a sign of what's to come. The average wait time right now for the security checkpoint lines is about 15 minutes. Earlier throughout the day, the average time was between 5 to 10 minutes. So we are already seeing this change on a Friday night. We spoke with some travelers earlier who say they want to avoid the rush. Listen in.
Today, I can already see the security line is a lot longer, so it looks a little more hectic.
I think we're getting out early enough. I think we're beating the rush.
So this holiday travel season, AAA is predicting nearly 7.5 million people will travel, with the peak travel day next Thursday, the 21st. We're talking about nearly 49,000 flights in one day. And the busiest airports, of course, here where we are in Chicago, Anaheim, and Orlando. Tom?
It'll be busy. Listen, airfares are less expensive right now after that very busy and crowded summer travel season. So what are the pros that you're talking to? What are they saying about whether these lower prices might last through 24 and then up to spring break?
Expert analysts are looking at the last 2 years. We saw an increase in prices. Well, now they're expecting those prices to level or possibly drop. So for any travelers looking ahead to 2024, already thinking about spring break and their vacation, perhaps now is the time to wait, especially if those prices are going to fall. So wait before you book that next trip. Tom?
All right, well, let's talk about the roads, because that's how most people go out during the holidays. And we know how much inflation has impacted people. But when it comes to gas prices, if we look at this graph from economists at Harvard, listen to this. The price of gas right now, when adjusted for inflation and improvements with cars' fuel economy, the price of gas is actually a lot lower than historical levels. And we know that recent lower pump prices have helped bring down inflation, certainly helped free up some cash, right? Talk to us about gas prices and about what that means for how many people will be on the roads.
Well, across the country, at least 28 states are seeing gas prices below that $3 mark that you mentioned. And that's something we could see. It could become a national average. It could even dip below the $3 mark. And for those folks traveling this holiday season, we're talking about 104 million people on the road. They consider that an early gift. And I'm one of those folks who will be driving home to see my mom and dad. So, hey, as long as those prices fall, it's a welcome sign for me. Tom?
For everybody, absolutely. Adrienne, thank you very much. She is at O'Hare, as you saw there. Coming up, Matthew Perry's autopsy report is in. It reveals the Friends actor's cause of death. Those details coming up after a break. Plus, Prince Harry's partial legal win in a phone hacking case has big legal implications in the UK. what it could mean for future cases against newspapers. That's coming up next. Okay, we're back, and a big win in court for Prince Harry today that could have big impact on the British media landscape. A judge today agreed that Harry's personal cell phone was probably hacked. That phone hacking was widespread and habitual over many years at the Mirror Group in the UK, and that senior managers were aware of the practice and covered it up. Mirror Group newspaper says in a statement, "Where historical wrongdoing took place, we apologize unreservedly. We have also taken full responsibility and paid appropriate compensation." Prince Harry's attorney said the case has shown a systemic practice of unlawful and appalling behavior and called for criminal charges to be brought against the publisher. Katie Spencer with Sky News in the UK has more about the possible impact on the court there.
A partial victory for Prince Harry with profound implications for the British media landscape. While newspapers say they've moved on from the dark arts of 20 years ago, the passing of time doesn't stop those who were in charge back then from being any less culpable. The ruling that those in senior positions at MGN, like former Chief Executive Sly Bailey and former editor Piers Morgan, knew about hacking and blagging, now puts the ball firmly in the police's court. Despite Morgan's repeated denials over the years, if the law was indeed broken, it's no longer a civil matter, but a criminal one.
I've never hacked a phone or told anybody else to hack a phone, and nobody has produced any actual evidence to prove that I did.
About time, say the whistleblowers who've repeatedly alleged top management knew and covered up.
It's difficult for me because, I don't want to see journalists go to jail or lose their jobs, but at the very least they could tell the truth.
If you're wondering whether those employing Morgan for his journalistic integrity might consider taking him off air in the interim, well, that'll be for his Talk TV boss Richard Wallace to decide, also a former editor of The Mirror. More widely, the court's ruling will have a domino effect for other newspapers involved in legal proceedings with Prince Harry. Many of those private investigators who worked for MGN worked for their titles too. It, of course, also calls into question everything that was said under oath back in 2011 at the Leveson inquiry. The judge finding that at the same time as the public inquiry into culture, practices and ethics was taking place, remarkably, the practice of unlawful information gathering still continued. Up until now, the Conservatives have leaned towards less regulation, in fact dropping the second part of the Leveson inquiry. But campaigners would argue that this judgment is evidence of a press regulatory system that's failed. The question is whether the government will want to change anything. Will they want to go to war with the newspapers with an election looming? A royal reckoning with print media unleashing a can of worms.
I hope it would put the fear into the boots of newspaper editors up and down the country that, look, if you use illegal means, whether it's phone hacking, whether it's private investigators, wiretapping, whatever, to obtain those stories, you will be found out.
The ruling might be over practices from a different era, but the judgment is damning. At a time when the newspaper world is dying, of redundancies, of struggling readership numbers, the fallout from Harry's battle for accountability looks set to unleash hell when the industry was already on its knees. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Katie Spencer, thank you very much. We want to get you now to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, we are just learning that Friends star Matthew Perry died from the acute effects of ketamine. That according to the LA County coroner. The department ruled his death an accident. Now remember, the 54-year-old actor died at the end of October, found in his house, actually in the hot tub in LA. Number 2, a former Facebook executive pleaded guilty to stealing more than $4 million from the company. The U.S. Attorney's Office says the Atlanta woman used an elaborate scheme, including fake vendors who she made up charges. Prosecutors allege she used the money to fund a lavish lifestyle. Her sentencing is scheduled for March. Number 3, former First Lady Melania Trump made a rare public appearance today during a naturalization ceremony at the National Archives here in D.C. She talked about her own journey to become a U.S. citizen in 2006, saying, in her words, it opened her eyes to the harsh realities that people face who are trying to become U.S. citizens. Number 4, Costco has a new hot commodity among online shoppers, gold bars. The company says it sold more than $100 million in gold last quarter. Customers are only able to buy 2 1-ounce bars per membership. Why buy in the first place? Well, the price of gold has gone up by about 12% this year. By the way, the stock market has gone up 23% this year. Number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers have fired their head coach and general manager after last night's abysmal 42-point loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. It was one of the worst losses in franchise history. After some pretty disappointing seasons for the team, the Chargers have named interim replacements. Our floor manager, Bert, is absolutely nodding his head. When we come back, a plane making a first landing on the North Carolina highway before bursting into flames. What we know about the people who were inside. They did survive. That's coming up next. We're back just after the bottom of the hour in an exclusive one-on-one with NBC News. A top Kremlin aide says Vladimir Putin wants the next U.S. president to be someone who is willing to talk and work with Russia on important issues. Listen to some of that interview.
Does President Putin have a view for who he'd like to see elected in the U.S. elections next year? President Biden or former President Trump?
You know, it's a very simple answer for this question. I have no doubt that President Putin would like to see someone who is more constructive towards our country.
That doesn't leave a whole lot of options. The Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, did not comment, though, on whether President Biden would fit that bill. He also didn't specifically mention former President Trump by name. Now, remember, this is happening as there's still this issue of Americans imprisoned in Russia. Just yesterday, Putin said Russia is in talks with the U.S. about how to bring home Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich. But Peskov says it's not easy when Whelan and Gershkovich are both accused of espionage, which they and the United States both deny. NBC's Keir Simmons did that interview. He's in Moscow. Keir, what more do we know about where this dialogue on getting these Americans back, where it stands right now?
Well, not very much. I mean, I tried to press Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, who you heard there, on that very question, Tom. And you know, ultimately, what he said was that by revealing the details, it makes the negotiation harder. Now, the Russians have said this again and again. Perhaps he's got a point, but then again, you suspect that the Russians are trying to keep their cards close to their chest, maybe don't want to say what they're really asking for, want to see what the US, what they can push the US to offer. Certainly, we know that the US said that it had made an offer that was rejected. President Putin yesterday in that marathon news conference said that wasn't the case. So I don't think that we necessarily know there will be a deal, although there have been in the past, as we know, of course, and those have involved exchanges of US prisoners here in Russia for others in the US. So it is something of a mystery, honestly.
And on the war in Ukraine, which we should stress, Russia started, Russia invaded Ukraine. Peskov actually, though, accused the West of unnecessarily dragging on the fighting, right? I mean, apparently he thinks the solution here is for Ukraine just to roll over.
It's such a good point, because there are many contradictions. Look, he says that the US is to blame for no dialogue with Russia. I pointed out to him, yeah, but that was after the invasion of Ukraine. He says that they want to talk, but only on Russia's terms. And then to add to that he says that the US shouldn't send more money to Ukraine because it will just be sending good money after bad. Take a listen.
Supplying Ukraine with weapons, you are becoming a part of this conflict, willingly or unwillingly. America is simply throwing money to a sea, to a wind. You're just spending money of your taxpayers, and you are getting involved in this conflict deeper and deeper.
That's another example, Tom, of the way that the Kremlin does watch the debates in the US. Of course, everyone will know that President Zelensky is battling to try and get money from Washington, as well as from Europe. More money, more billions of dollars or euros. And the Kremlin watches this, and it likes to engage in those conversations and see if it can have some influence over them.
Yeah, clearly Russia likes to see this discord in the United States and the disagreement, especially within the Republican House, of giving any more money to Ukraine at all. And by the way, Russia, I believe, has lost more than 300,000 troops already, right? Killed or wounded.
Yeah, Russia doesn't accept that, says that's lies and propaganda from the US. We honestly don't know. Worth remembering too, Tom, we're not told what the Ukrainian losses have been either. So, you know, there is a war of words always around the actual battle on the ground. You know, it's worth keeping that aspect in mind. Another thing too, though, and I'll just finish with this. Russian officials know that there are going to have to be peace talks at some point. Every war ends with talks. So some of this is about fighting over what those talks will look like. But ultimately, right now, we have a situation where President Putin says, same war goals, same aims. President Zelensky says, we won't give up any territory. We want Russia to go back to the 2014 borders, the internationally recognized borders. And there you have the problem. Even if there were talks, what could they agree on?
Yeah. Keir, great interview. It looks cold there. It's early in the morning, so get inside and get warm and go to bed. Keir Simmons, thank you very much. NBC News, as you know, covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for us. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions. We call the segment The Local. From our Southern Bureau, take a look at this. The fiery aftermath after a small plane with 2 people on board crash-landed on a busy North Carolina freeway. Firefighters say both people were able to get out of the plane before it caught on fire, and they're now in the hospital. The FAA says the plane declared an engine failure and made an emergency landing on the highway. Out of our Northeast Bureau, the Baltimore Orioles agreement to stay right where they are at Camden Yards is now headed for a vote. That, according to the team and Maryland's governor. The governor says it's a long-term deal that'll keep baseball in Baltimore, and the state officials are going to consider the agreement on Monday. We'll find out if it's a home run. And from our Midwest Bureau, a father-daughter duo was fishing in Wisconsin when the daughter thought their sonar picked up an octopus, of all things. Turns out they might have found a shipwreck from more than 150 years ago. Archaeologists think it's a ship that ran aground back in 1871. That's cool. Coming up, restrictive abortion bans across the country are pushing some people to consider, listen to this, permanent birth control measures. We're hearing from one woman about her journey to become sterilized. We're coming back. Quarter till the hour, and now to the legal drama unfolding this week as a woman in Texas, Kate Cox, tried and failed to get an exception to the state's abortion ban. Her lawyers say she needed to leave Texas for that procedure. President Biden's 2024 campaign calling it all horrifying, while the Republican presidential candidate has pressed on the campaign trail, many sharing mixed messages. It's all shaping up to be a major factor in next year's elections. But on a more personal level, because of bans like the one in Texas, some women are now considering permanent birth control measures, like sterilization procedures. We spoke with a young woman from Missouri about her decision. Here's NBC medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar.
Samantha Weiss knew early on she didn't want children.
I want to say I was about 12 years old.
Permanent sterilization was always her plan, but she thought there would be more time until it looked like the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade.
When the draft leak happened of the overturn, that's kind of what really got my butt in gear.
At 24 years old, she had both of her fallopian tubes removed.
After I got it done, it was so freeing.
Samantha lives in Missouri, where abortion is banned except in very limited circumstances. And she's just one of many women and men considering and undergoing permanent sterilization. Reddit channels like Child Free growing, with 1.5 million subscribers and users turning to similar Facebook Facebook groups like Sterile seeking sterilization as more restrictive abortion bans are put in place.
The motion carries.
In North Carolina, state lawmakers over the summer approved a 12-week restriction.
I have seen patients come to me across the spectrum.
Dr. Kavita Arora is an OBGYN at the UNC School of Medicine. She says she's seen an increase in requests for procedures like women getting their tubes tied or even fully removed.
Over and over, I hear that they were on the fence, that before Dobbs, the risks of surgeries was too much and it didn't make sense for their health care.
Now politics propelling them to make the decision.
The abortion bans push them over that fence.
How much do you think it's increased in the last year and a half, let's say?
I've talked to colleagues around the country about this, and we've seen anywhere in some practices from a 50% to other practices a 200% increase in requests.
And it's not always easy. For some, doctors simply refusing to do these types of procedures. Samantha was turned down twice.
I went in and I saw my usual gynecologist, and he made me feel really, really invalidated.
She says her doctor cited an old study with old data, which said 80% of women who were sterilized before 25 regret their decision.
I remember going back out to my car after that appointment and just breaking down and sobbing.
Samantha did her own research, though, and eventually found the right doctor. Even before the Dobbs decision, there was a decrease in adults wanting to have children. A Pew survey in 2021 showed 44% of non-parents aged 18 to 49 say it's not likely they'll have children, up from 3 years before. But most of these sterilization procedures are irreversible.
It's important to remember that sterilization is permanent, that it cannot be easily reversed, and that you cannot have children afterwards.
There are other methods of birth control that are still considered safe and reversible, including IUDs and vasectomies.
I think people should have the ability to make their own decision about their reproductive future and not to be forced to be pregnant if they don't want to be.
Dr. Natalie Azar with an important report. Thank you very much. The CDC is also out with new warnings about the recent increase in respiratory illnesses. Health officials there are saying that not enough people are getting vaccinated. The flu, COVID, RSV, which is why you're probably seeing a lot of it right now among people you know. In the past month, flu is up 200%, COVID up 51%, RSV up 60%. Hardest hit, the southern half of the country. Morgan Chesky joins me now. Morgan, we hear the trend lines are not looking great based on the vaccination rates right now, especially in the South. Why is the South hardest hit? Is that it?
Yeah, Tom, we have some additional numbers we'll get to, but that is the exact question that I asked one of the doctors today. Why is it moving through the South at this point? And she brought up the point that every year there is a natural progression of sorts of certain viruses. And as the warmer weather moves with weather patterns, so does the flu, Tom. And so right now, typically, this time of year when the flu season is getting going is when that virus starts to make its way through the southern states. And over time, as the year progresses, that is when it starts to make its way into the north. This is a typical pattern, not something that is related to vaccination rates, which might be your initial gut reaction. I do want to get to some of those numbers, though, that tell the rest of that story that you set up here, Tom, about why this flu season is going to be a little bit different here. And it actually does involve some of those rates we mentioned. Number one, 17% of adults have received an updated COVID shot. 17. That is not enough for that herd immunity we've heard so much about. The number that doctors are looking for, Tom, closer to 75, 80%, a far cry from that. But let's just talk about the flu right now, since we're in flu season. Only 40% of kids and adults have gotten this year's flu shot. And then 15.9% of older adults eligible for this RSV vaccine have gotten that. But on that flu shot number, Tom, 40%, there is a concern from several doctors that distrust of the COVID vaccine is now bleeding over and causing people to hold back from getting the typical flu shot that perhaps they got in years past, and they're simply not going ahead with this year. And that could be at least contributing partly to that 200% spike in hospitalizations we've seen. We're standing outside a Charlotte clinic here. One of the healthcare providers inside told us that they're essentially packed and that they don't want to get there. But at some point, they're going to have to start turning people away if these cases keep rising the way in which they are. Tom?
I was on a flight from Dallas to D.C. yesterday, Morgan, and the lady next to me was coughing and hacking and blowing her nose, and I thought, oh, no, I know what's coming in the next week, but I hope she's okay. Morgan, thank you very much. Parts of New York City in sudden darkness last night after transmission issues at a Con Edison substation. The power outage was brief but chaotic, and now it's raising new questions about the strength and safety of the nation's power grid. NBC correspondent Stephanie Gosk has the latest.
Overnight, parts of New York City grinding to a halt after a brief power surge wreaked havoc. Darkness flickering in the city that never sleeps right before midnight.
Quarter of an explosion at 25 J Street. Looking to get some units.
Residents felt the effects across the city, some even trapped in elevators, after a small explosion sparked at this substation in Brooklyn. Smoke seen filling the air.
Brooklyn to the 3-1, reporting power grid explosion.
The surge disrupted subway service, escalators and busy buildings frozen. Firefighters responded to calls from people stuck in elevators, including an employee at this Wegmans grocery store. Con Ed releasing a statement saying the surge was the result of a fault on a high-tension transmission line, causing customers to experience a dip or surge in power. It comes as there are concerns about the strength and safety of power grids across the country. With extreme weather approaching for the winter and systems under pressure, many hoping the disruption isn't repeated anywhere else this holiday season. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
All right, Stephanie, thank you very much. Still to come from us, Ye is set to release a new album, and his moves towards a comeback are making us question, is cancel culture canceled? That's coming up in our original tonight. We're still going. Top of the hour and breaking news in just the last couple of hours with the jury saying Rudy Giuliani has to pay, and a lot of money, for defaming election workers after the 2020 presidential race. The startling sum just awarded to two women who say their lives will never be the same after his claims. Then protest tonight after Israel says that its own soldiers accidentally killed 3 Israeli hostages. Hallie Jackson will have the latest from Tel Aviv on why they mistook their own people for the enemy. Plus, a potentially dangerous storm forecast to slam the East Coast all weekend with heavy rain and strong winds. We are live, and we're going to spell it all out, where things are standing right now and when you should expect it to actually end. And weather isn't the only thing you may have to fight if you're traveling. There's also the crowds and the traffic. But as people head out for the holidays in big numbers, we'll tell you why there's actually some good news for your travel budget. And we know now the cause of death for Friends star Matthew Perry. We'll hear from our medical team about why ketamine cost him his life and what it's used for. Good evening, I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie, who's on assignment in Israel. We'll talk to her in a minute. Tonight, a jury has decided Rudy Giuliani will have to pay $148 million in damages for defamatory statements he made about 2 Georgia poll workers after the 2020 election. Here's one of those workers, Ruby Freeman, reacting to the jury's decision tonight outside of D.C. District Court. Take a listen.
Money will never solve all of my problems. I can never move back into the house that I called home. I will always have to be careful about where I go and who I choose to share my name with. I miss my home, I miss my neighbors, and I miss my name.
And the other worker, her daughter, Shay Moss, had this to say about the significance of the trial.
Our greatest wish is that no one, no election worker or voter or school board member or anyone else ever experiences anything like what we went through. We hope no one ever has to fight so hard just to get your name back.
All right, we've got this covered for you tonight with NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos. NBC News justice correspondent Ken Delanian is also on the story outside of district court in Washington. Danny, Giuliani continued to reiterate his false claims against these women during the trial, getting himself in hot water with the judge earlier this week. This trial wasn't about whether or not he defamed Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, because he already was found guilty of that. He admitted to that, right?
Yes, in a sense, his lawyers had filed papers to that effect, but also he had failed to engage in discovery, and the penalty for that was essentially deeming liability established. So when Rudy says, I didn't have a chance to get up there and tell my side of the story, it's wrong for two reasons. Number one, he literally could have gotten up on the stand and told his side of the story. He chose not to because he thought the judge would hold him in contempt or something else. But the decision to essentially concede liability or force the judge to enter liability against him was really one that was done by him and his defense team through their conduct and their failure to engage in discovery. So that's why this trial was all about damages. And even still, Rudy could have taken the stand. It was his decision not to. So they were left with a very narrow defense of contesting that the harm to the reputation was this dollar amount. I mean, they had to argue that it was much less that the jury should award. But the jury instructions essentially compelled the jury to award something and told them that that value is really intangible, and it had to be based on what they thought was appropriate. Given the considerable evidence of the harm done emotionally and otherwise to these plaintiffs, this is really not that big of a surprise.
All right, well, let's be clear. Giuliani presented no evidence whatsoever to support his cause, his claims, and also, as you know, there were multiple investigations with Republicans who said that there was no evidence of this whatsoever. Nonetheless, Giuliani doubled down after leaving court today. Listen to this.
I have no doubt that my comments were made and they were supportable and are supportable today. The comments they received I had nothing to do with. My comments had no connection at all to those. There were thousands of things on in the press about this, of which mine were a small amount. There's no way to say that my comments connected to that.
All right, what he's saying there is that he's not responsible for the threats and the actual people showing up at these ladies' homes, but he is responsible for his own words. Can the financial penalty, way above what lawyers were asking for, what happened in this trial that caused them to bump that up so much?
The causation, that wasn't even an issue in this case.
Let me go to Ken on that real quickly, Danny. Ken?
Yeah, I mean, there was incredibly compelling testimony from these women. I wish it could have been on television, Tom. What we can play is their testimony from the January 6th committee hearings over the summer, but it was even more dramatic, even more detailed about the damage that was done to their lives. Their lives were absolutely shattered by the threats and the racist harassment that came in torrents after Rudy Giuliani and then Donald Trump and the Trump machine began to publicize these false claims, accusing them of election fraud. And just to go back to what you were saying before, when you played that clip of Rudy Giuliani doubling down, you saw that person to the right looking uneasy. That was his lawyer, because his lawyer came into court in this trial with a strategy of saying, yes, we know we defame these women, but please don't hammer us with, an absurd judgment, what he called the civil equivalent of the death penalty. We know we've done some harm, but it's not all our fault. But Rudy totally undermined that defense by going outside of court and repeating the lies about these women, such that he had to be admonished by the judge. And that, I think, at the end of the day, is why he couldn't testify. His lawyer couldn't dare put him on the stand and have him repeat what the judge had already said was not true, Tom.
Danny, talk about the appeals process. Giuliani did say he would appeal. He said, we'll win on appeal because we'll prove our case and we'll present evidence. No idea why he hasn't presented it yet. But number one, what would an appeal process look like? And number two, does Giuliani even have the money to be able to pay the fines at this point?
Yeah, in all likelihood, Giuliani is effectively judgment-proof if all of this other litigation and all of his real estate is tied up. I mean, the reality is most of us individuals are judgment-proof when it comes to these defamation-type cases. That's why the vast majority of lawyers reject the vast majority of defamation cases, because there are only a tiny few people, maybe Donald Trump, for example, who have enough liquidity to actually pay out a defamation verdict, because insurance policies usually won't cover it, and that's really what the plaintiff's bar goes after, is insurance policies. Now, on appeal, you may have an argument that the verdicts are excessive. Note that the verdicts were in excess of what the plaintiffs asked for. There's a reason for that. Plaintiffs' attorneys like me, we don't want runaway verdicts because they're likely to get chopped down on appeal. We want a lot, but not a cajillion dollars.
Gentlemen, we'll let you get ready for NBC Nightly News. Thank you very much. We appreciate your expertise. Other news now. The Israeli military says late today one of its units mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza, where troops are engaged in fierce combat. Now the world's attention to the question of whether Israel might listen to mounting calls for a new, more targeted chapter of this war against Hamas, with a top White House official in the West Bank today for a meeting with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, 24 hours after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That U.S. official basically now saying that this war is, in fact, about to change. Take a listen.
There will be a transition to another phase of this war, one that is focused in more precise ways on targeting the leadership and on intelligence-driven operations that continues to deal with the ongoing threat that Hamas poses.
Driving this new diplomatic effort, rising tensions between the U.S. and Israel over the cost the war is having on the civilians caught in the middle. Take a look here. Gazans searching through the rubble after an Israeli strike in Rafah. And then there's this Hamas saying that it launched a new missile barrage targeting Jerusalem late tonight for the first time in weeks. We've got team coverage. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is covering the White House. We begin, though, with Hallie Jackson, who was on the ground in Tel Aviv. An hour ago, Hallie, you were in the middle of a large demonstration through the streets of Tel Aviv.
Yeah, that's right. It is largely broken up, Tom, which is why we're back here at our location. But it was driven by what we saw earlier today, and you referenced it here, the accidental death, the mistaken killing of 3 hostages, Israeli hostages, it's believed, or at least hostages held in Gaza by the Israeli military, something that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and you see their names here, you see pictures for 2 of them, something Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called an unbearable tragedy, saying that Israel tonight is feeling deep sorrow, deep mourning. I can tell you from having been out at that demonstration, there is also deep anger. There is anger from people who feel like this government can and should do more to try to get to the negotiating table, to figure out a diplomatic way, and by diplomatic, I mean a diplomatically negotiated way to get hostages home immediately and urgently because of the concern, because of the questions about how they're doing. Obviously, in Gaza, for those who have been abducted on October 7th during that Hamas terror attack. So you're seeing some of the images here of what's called Hostage Square. That is where this particular demonstration tonight sort of centered around, and then people shut down some of the streets as they marched through Tel Aviv here. We do see people gather at Hostage Square, particularly family members of the hostages who are held regularly, usually on Saturday nights. That has been something that has been a bit of a pattern here in Israel. I spoke with one man whose cousin was on that list that came out a couple of days ago, he says, the list of people who were taken hostage who are now confirmed to have been killed. He had just gotten back today from a burial for his cousin, and he told me, listen, I could have gone home, I could have been with my family, but instead I came here because even though I can't get my cousin back, I can still work to help secure the release of all these other people here. So it feels in many ways like an incredibly somber, incredibly difficult night and an incredibly angry night for some of the family members who came out to the streets to protest here. There is a lot to this, of course. There is the question of, will there be something to break what has been a bit of a stalemate here in these talks? We haven't seen much concrete action now for weeks since that last temporary truce that saw the release of dozens of now former hostages, some of whom are starting to come out and tell stories and share moments from their time in captivity here. We know that the Qataris are critical to that kind of truce. We know that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, I was at a news conference here in Tel Aviv this morning where Mr. Sullivan answered questions about was he hopeful for some kind of a negotiated release? And what he said was that he believes it is of utmost importance to the Netanyahu administration here, to the prime minister, that it is of paramount importance to the United States, and it is going to be something that they continue to essentially put their foot on the gas about, Tom, moving forward.
Also, Hallie, we have Hamas saying that it has yet again targeted Jerusalem with rockets. This is coming as the U.S. doubles down on the message to Israel to tamp down the fighting. What do we know about the attacks on Jerusalem?
Yeah, what's interesting, so we're in Tel Aviv, obviously, which is about an hour and change away from Jerusalem. But if you're in Israel, you may be familiar with the sort of alerts that you can get on your phone to let you know when sirens are going off and what locations. And so obviously that happened earlier today. And then we learned more about what was going on as you're taking a look at some of the images here. The backdrop to this, the context of this from the sort of diplomatic position is the push to get Israel to essentially start to de-intensify this particular phase of the war that it's in and to move to a more precise, more targeted kind of phase in order to prevent some of the humanitarian suffering that we've seen, not in the West Bank, obviously, but over in Gaza. But in the West Bank, there has been, we were just off, I think, a day off of what was a 60-hour operation in Jenin that the IDF says was deadly, with officials estimating that multiple people were killed in that operation. It is an indication of just how many flashpoints there are. So not just the battlefield, if you will, in Gaza with Israel trying to, as they say, eliminate Hamas. There's what's happening in the West Bank. There's what's happening to the northern border, where I spent some time today for a story that you're about to see coming up on Nightly News, or spent some time yesterday, I should say, with concerns about Hezbollah. There are concerns about other Iran-backed proxies, like, for example, the Houthis in Yemen. You're seeing an announcement now today from two big shipping companies that they are going to temporarily pause traffic in the Red Sea because of some of these, what are believed to be Houthi attacks, at least aimed towards some of these commercial ships. So there's a lot of tension in the region, understandably, and a lot of questions about what happens moving forward, Tom.
A lot of complexity and a lot of nuance, and nobody better at breaking it all down. Hallie, thanks. We'll keep watching the 4 for you, and stay safe there in Israel. We want to bring in now NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, who's posted up at the White House. Gabe, let's talk diplomacy here. And how big of a deal is it, this message from the United States on where it says this war is going next? In other words, they're telling Israel it needs to slow down or be more targeted.
Well, there, Tom, U.S. diplomats are walking a very fine line here. As you know, the past couple of days, President Biden has shifted his tone, first at that private fundraiser with donors just a few days ago, where he said that Israel was losing global support because of, quote, indiscriminate bombing. And then yesterday at an unrelated event, urging the Israelis to be more careful and to protect civilian lives. Now, this all comes, though, as Hallie mentioned, his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, was in Israel today. Now, Jake Sullivan has been very clear in trying to stress that he is not imposing a timeline on that transition to that new phase in this war that you heard Hallie talk about. But just a short time ago, or earlier this week, the Israelis now saying that this war could take months. Sullivan was asked about that today in that news conference that you heard Hallie mention. Take a listen to what he had to say to that question.
There's no contradiction between saying the fight is going to take months and also saying that different phases will take place at different times over those months, including the transition from the high-intensity operations to more targeted operations.
So Jake Sullivan, of course, being very careful in his language, perhaps more careful, Tom, than President Biden was earlier in the week, where he also mentioned that, in his words, that he thought the Netanyahu far-right government might have to go. Certainly, another national security spokesman, John Kirby, was asked about the president's comments and appeared at times to be trying to walk that back. Of course, he denied it, but he was trying to square what the president said earlier this week to that very careful diplomatic language that Jake Sullivan is using in his conversations with Benjamin Netanyahu this week as well. Also, one other point, Tom, the U.S. now also reacting for the first time to that announcement earlier today from the IDF that 3 Israeli hostages had been mistakenly killed. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said that it is heartbreaking and that it is tragic that the president has been briefed on the incident, although he has not spoken about it yet with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Tom?
Boy, they are all walking such a high-wire act on diplomacy. Gabe, thank you very much for your expertise from the White House. All right, if you are on the East Coast, brace yourself. A megastorm is ramping up to become quite the rain and wind maker, targeting the entire eastern seaboard this weekend, with its eyes set first on Florida, where Governor DeSantis just activated the state guard to help out. Nearly the entire state will be getting soaked with torrential rain tomorrow, which creates concerns about potential flooding. Already 5 million people are under flood alerts there. And then the East Coast. Listen to this. We're talking up to 3 inches of rain up the entire coast, maybe even 7 inches in areas. On top of that, it's bringing really strong winds, potentially up to 50 miles per hour. So when should you plan to stay inside and turn on the holiday movies? Here's the rough timing now of when the storm will hit. Miami, Tampa, and Charleston, South Carolina tonight or tomorrow through Sunday. Here in D.C., plus New York and Boston, we're looking at Sunday through Monday. We have NBC's Guad Venegas in Hollywood, Florida, standing by. But first, meteorologist Bill Cairns has the forecast. All right, Bill, a storm like this, rare for this time of year, and I guess we're just lucky we don't have snow in it, right?
Oh, this would have been a huge snowstorm if the cold air had been in place. But it's for like nowhere. I mean, even like southern portions of Canada are going to get rain from the storm eventually. So this is the map on Saturday. This is when we're going to start having our severe weather threat Saturday evening in central Florida as the storm moves closer to the shore. It's going to rain all day long. We'll have urban type flooding. The soil's very sandy in Florida. 1 to 3 inches isn't going to cause a lot of problems. But in poor drainage areas, that's when you'll see it. The severe weather threat, Tampa, Orlando, I-4 southwards all the way down to the Keys. Again, isolated tornadoes and wind damage was the biggest thing. We're hoping we don't have a repeat of last weekend's severe weather outbreak, 32 tornadoes and 6 fatalities. This is on Sunday, all of the worst weather. It's going to look and feel like a tropical storm is coming up through the Carolinas. If you're anywhere near the coast, winds will feel like a tropical storm. The trees will be blowing. There's no leaves on them, so we're hoping we don't have too many power outages. We will get some coastal flooding. And then Monday morning, the storm's right over the top of New York City. I-95 from about Baltimore northwards. It's going to be a very slow go. It's going to be windy, so the airports are going to be a mess most of the day on Monday. And then the storm will exit finally. We only have flood watches up for one spot, mostly the Philadelphia area, much of New Jersey. We could have some additional flood watches issued through the weekend, but it looks like it's not enough rain in the southeast for significant flooding, isolated flooding, especially Charleston. As you know, Tom, Charleston floods all the time, and we get a big storm like this, we can expect that. And then again, 4 inches possible in New England. So yes, the storm's going to be more of an inconvenience, but it's going to cancel a lot of people's holiday plans this weekend.
But now I have an excuse to follow my passion, which is watching Christmas movies on the Hallmark Channel all day Sunday and Sunday night, right?
We're going to get you knitting soon, yes.
All right, Bill, thanks very much. All right, let's now go to Guad Venegas, standing by in Hollywood, Florida. I don't know if you're that kind of a TV viewer, but talk to us about what the plan is there on the ground in Hollywood, Guad.
Tom, as Bill mentioned, it's a cold storm. I mean, we're used to hot temperatures down here. Even for the winter, this is pretty cold for us. It's been chilly all day. The wind has been a hassle, gusty winds. I mean, it's hard to stand up straight. Even right now, I've got the ocean behind me. It's getting dark, so you can't see it on camera. But we had waves all day long with rip current alerts all up and down the coast. Of course, a lot of tourists in the area being warned to stay away from the water. And some of the people that we spoke to here today were, in fact, visiting South Florida. Unfortunately, many of them had these vacations planned ahead of time, so they still came down with the bad weather. Some of them will be returning before the weather gets worse tomorrow, but here's what some of them told me earlier today.
We all packed rain gear for on deck. We've got all of our jackets and we're ready to go.
We're leaving for New Jersey on tomorrow, so I hope it's not bad enough where we get stuck here.
This wind, it's the Windy City, Chicago, or is the Windy City here?
Again, yes, it's been a lot of wind today, but we are expecting that rain to come in through the weekend beginning tonight. That's what the forecast indicates. And that's what has local authorities worried because of the possibilities of flooding. You mentioned, Bill mentioned how Central Florida has all of these alerts. There were holiday events scheduled all across the state, Christmas events that have been canceled up and down from Central Florida to South Florida. There was a big boat parade here in the Fort Lauderdale area that was canceled, of course. And now authorities are also using emergency pumps that have been dispersed through different neighborhoods. And these will help in the event of a lot of rain in a very short amount of time. These pumps will help the sewage water get to canals that eventually get it out into the ocean. People have to keep in mind that the landscape here in Florida is very flat. So when it rains, that water has nowhere to go but those canals, but to the canals that eventually take it out into the ocean. So the hope here is that we don't get that much rain where it doesn't flood like it has in the past, as we saw a few months ago in Fort Lauderdale, Tom.
That's a lot of rain and a lot of wind coming. Stay safe, Guad. Thanks very much. Lots of folks across the country are right now looking to get a head start on holiday travel a full 10 days before Christmas, trying to avoid the last-minute frenzy. About 115 million people are expected to fly or drive over the holidays, 2.5 million more than last year, many working remotely on the front end and also on the backside. So that creates, therefore, a longer stretch of travel. Remember last year's Southwest Airlines meltdown? Southwest promises it will not happen this year. Other airlines are also preparing. NBC's Adrian Broaddus is joining us now from Chicago O'Hare. All right, Adrian, you're at the second or third busiest airport in the country. What are they forecasting for the next week or so there?
They are expecting to see long lines, and tonight we've seen a steady increase here at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The security checkpoint line, the average wait time is about 15 minutes. But earlier in the day, we spoke with some travelers who say they too will take advantage of working remote because they don't want to be in the middle of the rush. Listen in.
Today, I can already see the security line is a lot longer, so it looks a little more hectic.
I think we're getting out early enough. I think we're beating the rush.
At least 7.5 million people are expected to travel over this 2023 holiday period. With the peak travel day next Thursday, we're talking about the 21st, at least 49,000 flights in one day, Tom.
Yeah, those are the AAA numbers. Listen, let's talk airfares because flights are less expensive right now than they were a year ago. We had a very busy and crowded summer travel season. So what are you hearing from the travel pros about whether we will be able to keep these prices low going into spring break 2024?
Well, that is the hope. Industry experts are predicting that the prices may level or even fall. So for those looking to book travel for 2024, perhaps hold off a little bit and see what happens with the prices there.
All right, and now let's talk about the roads, right? Because we're all enjoying the fact that gasoline prices have come down. That's helped bring inflation down. We have a graph to show you, though. This is what's amazing. We actually reached out to Harvard today, and the price of gas, when you adjust for inflation and improvements to car fuel efficiency, the price of gas today is actually lower than historical levels. And in fact, we're at or below levels from the 1980s on inflation-adjusted basis. So we see prices going down at the pump, and that's helping in people's wallets, right? People are having a bit more cash to spend on presents.
Every little bit counts. At least 28 states, Tom, are below that average of $3 a gallon. And we could see the national average dip to that $3 mark or even lower, according to AAA. And you can only imagine that is a welcome gift for people who will be traveling and driving. At least 104 million people are expected to drive this holiday season.
All right, I know you're driving to see Mom, so be very careful. Drive slowly and safely, and we'll check in with you on the backside as well. Adrian, thank you very much. Well, the mother of a 6-year-old who shot his teacher in Virginia earlier this year has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for felony child neglect. Dejon Taylor's son used her gun to shoot his teacher, Abby Zwerner, in front of her first-grade class this past January. The boy, who is a minor and has not been named, told police he climbed onto a drawer to reach the top of the dresser where the mom's 9mm handgun was in her purse. Taylor initially told investigators she had secured her gun with a trigger lock. Investigators say, though, they never found one. NBC's Kathy Park is joining us now. Kathy, this sentence is actually a bit tougher than what state sentencing guidelines call for and harsher than what prosecutors had wanted, right? And harsher than a plea deal, I understand.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, good to be with you. That's absolutely right. So going into today's sentencing, Deja Taylor, her attorney, the prosecutors, they were looking at close to 6 months behind bars, but ultimately it was a judge to determine her fate, and that judge decided 2 years behind bars. So essentially what's happening next for Deja Taylor? So she first needs to basically serve out 21 months in the federal prison system, because back in June, she actually pleaded guilty for marijuana use while owning a firearm, which is illegal under federal law. So 21 months and then 2 years today. So she's looking at nearly 4 years behind bars. And Tom, in addition to all of that, she won't be able to make contact with her son, who is currently 7 years old now. She won't be able to make contact with him until he's 18 years old.
Wow. All right. I also understand that the teacher, Abby Werner, was in court today, and she read a victim impact statement. What did she say?
Yeah, she was in the courtroom, and she says her life ever since the shooting has never been the same. She suffers from anxiety and depression. Keep in mind, she is still suing the school district for $40 million for not addressing the warning signs, but she is leaning on the kindness of strangers, people in her inner circle, as she continues this healing journey of hers. Tom?
Quite a story. Kathy Park, thank you very much. Coming up from us, hundreds of people hospitalized after 2 train cars collided in Beijing, what transportation investigators say caused the crash. Plus, a stunning story out of Tennessee, how a 4-month-old baby survived being swept up by a tornado. We are coming back. All right, we have breaking news, and we've been learning in the last hour the cause of Friends star Matthew Perry's death. He died from, quote, acute effects of ketamine. Now, that's according to the L.A. County medical examiner. The department ruled his death was an accident. Remember, the 54-year-old actor died at the end of October at his house in L.A. He was found unresponsive in the hot tub. We want to bring in right now our medical contributor and expert, Dr. Akshay Syal. Doctor, help us break this down. First of all, what is ketamine? And I've always thought of it as something that is used in big animals, but maybe I don't have a good understanding.
Hey, Tom. Good evening. You know, our condolences to the friends and family of Matthew Perry. And to answer your question, ketamine is it's a drug. It's a drug that we use for. It can be used in anesthesia. It's commonly called Special K. It can be used recreationally. It can create a sort of dissociative effect. And Tom, I took a look at the report that the medical examiner's office out of L.A. released, and essentially looks like ketamine created a perfect storm for him. He was around a body of water. We suspect that the ketamine created a sense of dissociation, and that, you know, around a body of water can lead to a lot of trouble. But Tom, the report did point out he did have pretty severe heart disease, and we know that he's had a pretty rough medical history as well. So all of these things really creating that perfect storm. But Tom, there is one unknown here, and we know that Matthew Perry was receiving ketamine for depression and anxiety treatment. It's very effective for this reason. A lot of people use it without a problem. His last dose was about 10 days ago, and the half-life of the drug is 3 to 4 days. So, you know, he had about 3,000. It was his level of ketamine at the time of exam. So we don't really know where that came from. It's you know, the treatment that he was getting for his depression and anxiety was probably out of his system. So it's unclear at the time where the ketamine may have come from. But Tom, just to end on a note, if you're somebody you know somebody out there struggling with addiction, it is a disease that can affect anybody. Check in on them. There are great resources we can use out there, and knowledge is ultimately power.
You know, amen to that. We've all have friends, family who've struggled with it. Listen, but on the ketamine, you said there were 3,000 milligrams in his system. Is that accurate? I mean, that's if it was supposed to be out of his system, if the previous dose was 10 days ago provided by a physician, 3,000 milligrams, is that a lot?
It's a lot, and it's about the level of that you would expect in somebody who's undergoing general anesthesia for surgery. So it's a lot, and it's not clear at this time, Tom, how exactly it got in there.
Well, so would that suggest that he may have self-medicated? I mean, that seems like that's an awful lot, and I'm not sure, would a doctor have been nearby to provide that?
You would hope, but Tom, this is a drug that you can get recreationally, and that may have ultimately been what happened, but it's too early to say, and I don't want to speculate too much at this point, Tom.
And listen, on the heart issue, you talked about the fact that he had known heart disease. Could that have been created or aggravated by so much drug and alcohol abuse over his lifespan?
Absolutely, yeah. What the report found was coronary artery disease, essentially plaque in the arteries, and an unhealthy lifestyle, whether that's drugs, alcohol, not exercising, all of that creates that perfect storm that could ultimately make you more likely to have those adverse heart problems, Tom.
You know, I've told the producers, I actually sat next to him at a dinner one night here in Washington, and he talked the whole night about wanting to help others. Even then, I mean, this is 10 years ago, wanting to help others. And so how sad that actually ketamine seems to have been what may have taken his life. Doctor, thank you very much. We really appreciate your expertise. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
All right, turning now to a bipartisan effort in Congress to change the way the country fights the scourge of domestic violence. Every minute in the United States, nearly 20 people are subjected to violence from their partner. That, according to estimates from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. But a new movement is recruiting workers at beauty salons, training them, listen to this, training them how to spot signs of abuse and then help victims get the support they need. NBC's Julie Sirkin has more on the story.
Beauty salons. They're not just for small talk and styling. They're a place where bonds are formed at the center of so many communities, making them a potential lifeline for victims of domestic abuse who have nowhere else to turn.
Clients may be isolated from all of the closest relationships in their lives, from their best friends, from their family members.
In some cases, abusers could allow victims to get their hair cut and nails manicured.
Sometimes it's because the abuser has a lot of ideas about their appearance and wants them to look a certain way. And so we truly may be the only consistent relationship that they still have in their circle.
According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1 in 4 women have been victims of domestic abuse. Only after finally opening up about her experience did Nashville hairstylist Suzanne Post realize she was one of them.
It was when someone said the words, "This is abuse," that I actually took the time to research and find out what that was outside of the physical signs.
After leaving that abusive relationship, now Post is healing her wounds by helping other victims. She launched a course to train cosmetologists to spot the warning signs of abuse. Some are physical, thinning hair, bruising, scars. Others less obvious, but could be just as damaging.
The partner always accompanies the client to appointments, or if they're controlling or excessively jealous. If the partner won't allow your client to change their hair color.
We took the 20-minute online course ourselves. It teaches cosmetologists and really anyone what to look for, which questions to ask, and where to call for help. Tennessee and Illinois have already made it a mandatory program for beauty professionals. And U.S. Senators Marsha Blackburn and Tammy Duckworth want to expand with a new bipartisan bill that would incentivize all 50 states to implement what has worked so well for theirs.
What do you think it is about being in a salon that makes women so comfortable to open up?
Salons are great places for women to have conversations that they wouldn't sit down and have with male colleagues, that they wouldn't have at a lunch meeting. So
it's a safe place.
Yes, indeed.
The law would offer grants to states that require cosmetologists to receive the free training, which thousands have taken in their states already.
This was an opportunity for us to say to our colleagues, our states have had these programs and they're working well.
We have actually seen lives being saved by this legislation.
Sharon Robertson is the director of the Nashville YWCA, operating the largest domestic violence shelter in the state.
One of our citizens came to us. She was a hairstylist, and she saw information about a program that provided education to individuals who were stylists about domestic violence.
Back in Washington, the senators hope they can brush off partisanship.
How has this been received by your colleagues?
I don't think it can be more bipartisan than this.
That's right.
NBC's Julie Sirkin is joining me now. So the senators obviously worked together before on this issue, but what makes them so confident that this bill can pass now in this very, very divided Congress?
Well, Tom, there's two parts to that. One that you just touched on, of course, they had a long working relationship, not just in the Senate, but also in the House. They've passed work on military legislation concerning women, on sex trafficking legislation, other domestic violence issues. And so they have a lot of proven success track record, really, when it comes to this. And what they say about this bill that's so important is it's not like it would require all states to implement a new law. It's not like it would mandate this training for every single state once Congress passes it. This is something, again, that is just to spread awareness. It's to offer grants to states that do require this training and make it mandatory for salon workers, for cosmetologists, in order for them to obtain their license. And for that, they think this is just a no-brainer. I do want to say, though, Tom, we talked about this a lot in the piece and in the conversation we're having right now. If you or somebody you know watching this is experiencing domestic violence at home, there is a hotline that is available for you to call. You should see that number on your screen, 1-800-799-SAFE, or you can text START to 88788. Tom?
88788 is how you text START. Hey, this was a great report. Julie, thank you very much. All right, let's get you over to 5 more things that our team thinks you might want to know about tonight. Number 1, parents in Tennessee say they have found their 4-month-old safe in a downed tree after a tornado sucked him up from their mobile home. The family recounted the story from last weekend to NBC's affiliate in Nashville. The baby's father says he was holding onto the bassinet, going in circles when they both were thrown. Thankfully, all family members survived. Storms that day that killed 6 people in Tennessee. Again, 5 days later, the 4-month-old is alive. Number 2, an elderly man is accused of stabbing and killing his wife over a fight about pancakes in their Washington, D.C. home. That, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. He allegedly didn't want to eat the pancakes she made and then stabbed her in the back. Police say he told investigators he loved his wife and he prayed the killing was just a delusion. He's pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder charges. Number 3, a former Facebook executive pleaded guilty to stealing more than $4 million from the company. The U.S. Attorney's Office says the Atlanta woman used an elaborate scheme, including fake vendors and made-up charges. Prosecutors allege she used the money to fund a lavish lifestyle. Her sentencing is scheduled for March. Listen up if you need a used car. Honda now allowing customers to lease used cars through its dealerships. The company says its goal is to offer more choices to people who have tighter budgets, especially young and first-time buyers who might want to lease. And number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers have fired their head coach and their general manager after last night's 42-point loss against the Las Vegas Raiders. Some call it a debacle. It was one of the worst losses in franchise history. After some pretty disappointing seasons for the team already, the Chargers have named interim replacements already. When we come back, new details today about that missing British boy found in France 6 years later. That's in the Global. We're back now to the legal drama unfolding this week as a woman in Texas, Kate Cox, tried and failed to get an exception to the state's anti-abortion ban, or the abortion ban, I should say. Her lawyers say she needed to leave Texas for the procedure. And it's all shaping up to be a major factor in next year's elections. But on a more personal level, because of bans like this one in Texas, some women are now considering permanent birth control measures, like sterilization procedures. We spoke with a young woman from Missouri about her decision. Here's NBC medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar.
Samantha Weiss knew early on she didn't want children.
I want to say I was about 12 years old.
Permanent sterilization was always her plan, but she thought there would be more time until it looked like the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade.
When the draft leak happened of the overturn, that's kind of what really got my butt in gear.
At 24 years old, she had both of her fallopian tubes removed.
After I got it done, it was so freeing.
Samantha lives in Missouri, where abortion is banned except in very limited circumstances. And she's just one of many women and men considering and undergoing permanent sterilization. Reddit channels like Child Free growing, with 1.5 million subscribers and users turning to similar Facebook Facebook groups like Sterile seeking sterilization as more restrictive abortion bans are put in place.
The motion carries.
In North Carolina, state lawmakers over the summer approved a 12-week restriction.
I have seen patients come to me across the spectrum.
Dr. Kavita Arora is an OBGYN at the UNC School of Medicine. She says she's seen an increase in requests for procedures like women getting their tubes tied or even fully removed.
Over and over, I hear that they were on the fence, that before Dobbs, the risks of surgeries was too much and it didn't make sense for their health care.
Now politics propelling them to make the decision.
The abortion bans push them over that fence.
How much do you think it's increased in the last year and a half, let's say?
I've talked to colleagues around the country about this, and we've seen anywhere in some practices from a 50% to other practices a 200% increase in requests.
And it's not always easy. For some, doctors simply refusing to do these types of procedures. Samantha was turned down twice.
I went in and I saw my usual gynecologist, and he made me feel really, really invalidated.
She says her doctor cited an old study with old data, which said 80% of women who were sterilized before 25 regret their decision.
I remember going back out to my car after that appointment and just breaking down and sobbing.
Samantha did her own research, though, and eventually found the right doctor. Even before the Dobbs decision, there was a decrease in adults wanting to have children. A Pew survey in 2021 showed 44% of non-parents aged 18 to 49 say it's not likely they'll have children, up from 3 years before. But most of these sterilization procedures are irreversible.
It's important to remember that sterilization is permanent, that it cannot be easily reversed, and that you cannot have children afterwards.
There are other methods of birth control that are still considered safe and reversible, including IUDs and vasectomies.
I think people should have the ability to make their own decision about their reproductive future and not to be forced to be pregnant if they don't want to be.
Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you very much for that report. All right, NBC News covers hundreds of international stories each day, and it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, so our international teams have done it for us. Here are some of the things keeping an eye on, and this is what they call the global. In China, authorities say more than 500 people, 500 were sent to the hospital after two subway trains collided in heavy snow in Beijing. More than 100 people apparently had broken bones. Slick tracks triggered automatic braking on one train, while a train coming behind on a descending section went into a skid and was unable to brake in time. What a mess. In England, police in Manchester say a British teenager who was found in France after disappearing 6 years ago is expected to return to his home country this weekend. Alex Batty went missing when he was 11 years old during a family trip to Spain. His mother is wanted in connection with his disappearance. And in Russia, prison officials say jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is being moved by train to a new prison in another part of the country. The news comes after Navalny's allies raised the alarm about his whereabouts, saying he hasn't been seen by his lawyers in something like 10 days. Moving prisoners in Russia can take weeks, during which time lawyers and family are usually not able to get any information about their location or their well-being. Coming up, a new warning today from the CDC, where the agency says respiratory illnesses are spiking right now. We'll have that when we come back. We're back now to the legal drama unfolding this week as a woman in Texas, Kate Cox, tried and failed to get an exception to the state's anti-abortion ban, or the abortion ban, I should say. Her lawyers say she needed to leave Texas for the procedure. And it's all shaping up to be a major factor in next year's elections. But on a more personal level, because of bans like this one in Texas, some women are now considering permanent birth control measures, like sterilization procedures. We spoke with a young woman from Missouri about her decision. Here's NBC medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar.
Samantha Weiss knew early on she didn't want children.
I want to say I was about 12 years old.
Permanent sterilization was always her plan, but she thought there would be more time until it looked like the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade.
When the draft leak happened of the overturn. That's kind of what really got my butt in gear.
At 24 years old, she had both of her fallopian tubes removed.
After I got it done, it was so freeing.
Samantha lives in Missouri, where abortion is banned except in very limited circumstances. And she's just one of many women and men considering and undergoing permanent sterilization. Reddit channels like Child Free growing, with 1.5 million subscribers and users turning to similar Facebook groups like Sterile, seeking sterilization, as more restrictive abortion bans are put in place.
The motion carries.
In North Carolina, state lawmakers over the summer approved a 12-week restriction.
I have seen patients come to me across the spectrum.
Dr. Kavita Arora is an OBGYN at the UNC School of Medicine. She says she's seen an increase in requests for procedures like women getting their tubes tied or even fully removed.
Over and over, I hear that they were on the fence, that before Dobbs, the risks of surgeries was too much and it didn't make sense for their health care.
Now politics propelling them to make the decision.
The abortion bans push them over that fence.
How much do you think it's increased in the last year and a half, let's say?
I've talked to colleagues around the country about this, and we've seen anywhere in some practices from a 50% to other practices a 200% increase in requests.
And it's not always easy. For some, doctors simply refusing to do these types of procedures. Samantha was turned down twice.
I went in and I saw my usual gynecologist, and he made me feel really, really invalidated.
She says her doctor cited an old study with old data, which said 80% of women who were sterilized before 25 regret their decision.
I remember going back out to my car after that appointment and just breaking down and sobbing.
Samantha did her own research, though, and eventually found the right doctor. Even before the Dobbs decision, there was a decrease in adults wanting to have children. A Pew survey in 2021 showed 44% of non-parents aged 18 to 49 say it's not likely they'll have children, up from 3 years before. But most of these sterilization procedures are irreversible.
It's important to remember that sterilization is permanent, that it cannot be easily reversed, and that you cannot have children afterwards.
There are other methods of birth control that are still considered safe and reversible, including IUDs and vasectomies.
I think people should have the ability to make their own decision about their reproductive future and not to be forced to be pregnant if they don't want to be.
Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you very much for that report. All right, NBC News covers hundreds of international stories each day, and it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, so our international teams have done it for us. Here are some of the things keeping an eye on, and this is what they call the global. In China, authorities say more than 500 people, 500 were sent to the hospital after 2 subway trains collided in heavy snow in Beijing. More than 100 people apparently had broken bones. Slick tracks triggered automatic braking on one train, while a train coming behind on a descending section went into a skid and was unable to brake in time. What a mess. In England, police in Manchester say a British teenager who was found in France after disappearing 6 years ago is expected to return to his home country this weekend. Alex Batty went missing when he was 11 years old during a family trip to Spain. His mother is wanted in connection with his disappearance. And in Russia, prison officials say jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is being moved by train to a new prison in another part of the country. The news comes after Navalny's allies raised the alarm about his whereabouts, saying he hasn't been seen by his lawyers in something like 10 days. Moving prisoners in Russia can take weeks, during which time lawyers and family are usually not able to get any information about their location or their well-being. Coming up, a new warning today from the CDC, where the agency says respiratory illnesses are spiking right now. We'll have that when we come back.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.